Well, South Australia, as I just mentioned, has entered what I'm claiming to be the toughest lockdown measures in the nation, as authorities desperately attempt to tackle a coronavirus cluster. I'd like to say growing, but it's not growing. There have been no new cases of virus today, prompting questions, a lot from me I can tell you, as to whether this move is an overreaction. Well, joining me now is South Australian Senator Alex Antic. Alex, thank you for your time.
G'day, Corey. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Look, mate, I've got to tell you that I think the Marshall government has completely overreacted to this. We've got 23 cases, 16 or 17 of them are directly in one family, and this has happened because of a stuff-up by the government with their quarantine regulations, and now the whole state has been locked down, including those who are maybe 1,000 kilometres away from this epicentre. How are you seeing it?
Well, look, I think this is always going to be difficult. There's never going to be a perfect solution for this. 2 days ago, I spoke to Chris Kenny on your station and indicated to him that I thought that this would get significantly worse. It hasn't, thankfully. We've only had, I think, a couple of cases in 2 or 3 days, none yesterday, which is a great surprise and a great relief. I think at that stage, when you look at what was happening with some sensible restrictions, things were travelling reasonably well. And at that stage, I said, look, I don't see any hope that we would dive back under the doona, to use the Prime Minister's language. But the truth of the matter is, I think lockdowns do sort of force us back under the doona. And we've seen a lot of disquiet in the community today about that. We've seen the central markets, as a great example, get shut down when they thought they should be open, throwing away potentially huge numbers of dollars in terms of stock and all that sort of stuff. So these are very real concerns for retail outlets, for small business people, and as you quite rightly say, for regional people. We've got people down in the southeast and across at the Eyre Peninsula here who are miles and miles and miles away from the nearest case and always have been. I think this needs, in the longer run, a more nuanced approach. We're only talking about 6 days at the moment, but the truth of the matter is we cannot lock down for long periods of time. I think South Aussies are happy with the 6 days.
Yeah, well, many of them, I'm sure, Senator, are happy just to have a holiday. They don't see the long-term implications of this. But the messaging from the South Australian government and the health authorities has been absolutely pathetic. Absolutely pathetic. Yesterday, we had the Premier and the Chief Health Officer, Nicholas Spurrier, tell us that masks were mandatory when we're going outside. And then today they say, no, they're just recommended because the logistics of getting masks out across the region is too hard. So they've had months to prepare for it. They've failed to do it. You've got Nicholas Spurrier saying that you're allowed to go to the bottle shop in order to help alcoholics and to reduce domestic violence, all the while that she's been saying for a decade or more that alcohol contributes to domestic violence. And you've got the police department on their website saying you're only allowed to go to the supermarket. So who do you pay attention to here when they're contradicting each other and they can't keep their message straight from one day to the next?
Well, I pay attention to your Twitter feed. I saw your tweet about running down to the shops to get a bottle of tequila as being a nice halfway house. So that's one option. And I think you're quite right to point out the difficulties in terms of the messaging. It's always going to be difficult. There are always going to be mixed messages, and I think that's just the nature of this kind of reaction. What I don't want to see is this lockdown go on for long periods of time. I tend to think lockdowns are a little bit like going to the gym. If you can't see yourself doing this for long periods of time, there's no point in putting yourself through the pain for short periods. We've got to find a nuanced way to do it, and I'm confident we will.
Well, one final thing here, Alex. We've been told that this strain is more deadly than any strain before, even though no one has died from it. And what are the implications that when 23 people have this virus, no one is dying, no one, to my knowledge, is in hospital? How many times are we going to have to go through this open and shut process where businesses, as you point out, are wasting stock, they're trashing their brands and their businesses, no one can plan, and the government doesn't seem to care?
Well, I'm not sure the government doesn't care, but I think the manner in which we go about, fixing this solution in the long term has to be without lockdown. It simply can't go on. We've had businesses that were close to the wire anyway, who are now clearly going to be even closer to the wire. We talked about the possibility of a second way of doing great damage to small businesses, and it will. So this has got to be a very, very short-term approach. I don't want to see it go on any longer than 6 days.
Senator Antic, thanks so much for your time tonight. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Corey.